Veteran on the Move, episode 22. Welcome to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you're a transitioning veteran, an entrepreneur wannabe, or someone who's still stuck in that job trying to escape, this podcast is dedicated to your success. So welcome aboard. Sit back and enjoy the ride. Okay, today we're talking with Cedric Terrell. Cedric is a Marine Corps veteran and who, after he got out, started his own photography business. So he's a photographer. He has studios in Washington, D.C., New York City, and L.A. Cedric, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, could you give us a little background on what you did in the Marine Corps?
So in the Marine Corps, I started off as admin out in San Diego at Miramar, and then transitioned into becoming a Marine security guard, so guarded embassies for 3 years. Okay. And then moved on to being a joint operations center NCO at PACOM, and then finished off as a congressional liaison at the Pentagon.
Wow, sounds like a great career.
Yeah, a lot of different things.
And a lot of people who might be unfamiliar with the Marine Corps Security Guard program, the Marines guard the embassies around the world, the U.S. embassies, and you obviously don't have to be a grunt or a special type of MOS in order to be a Marine security guard. We pull Marines from all the different MOSs around the Marine Corps. You go through a very lengthy application process, and it's not easy. It's a very competitive program. So it says a lot to you as an individual and what kind of a Marine you were that you got selected for the MSG program. So good on you, and thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
Now, can you talk a little bit about what your transition out of the Marine Corps was like?
So I decided to move back to Washington, D.C. from Morocco after getting off the MSG program, because I was gonna go to school and study marketing, and I wanted to be in a city that would give me the ability to do work as a photographer and start progressing in that direction. And so came back to D.C., found a place to live, went to school. And initially hit the ground running with photography, started off shooting weddings within a week of being back in the country and just building my portfolio and starting to develop a base here in DC.
So you just jumped right into it. You didn't even hardly think about it, huh?
I mean, I put a lot of thought into it while I was on active duty. So when the time came, I was ready to move forward.
Okay. Did you end up going back to school?
I did. I studied marketing at American University.
Oh, okay, great. So as you're going back to school, you were starting getting your photography business going at the same time?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I wanted to study something that I felt was going to be beneficial to my photography career. And so I knew that if I couldn't market myself and sell myself, then it didn't matter what I did with photography, I would never make any progress. So that's the direction I went.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I that's right in line with when you're starting any kind of business, whether it be a podcast, online business, photography, even a brick and mortar type store. 20% of it is just getting the business up and running, but 80% of it is how you market it.
Exactly.
Now, tell me why you didn't decide to go for the standard job coming out of the Marine Corps. What was your inspiration or motivation for trying to do something on your own like this photography business?
I guess you could say I've always had an entrepreneur sort of mindset where working, a standard job in an office with other people has never been something I wanted to do. So I've always wanted to be doing something a little bit more interesting and sort of creating my own path and developing something, seeing the progress every day, everything that's happened. In my company, I am a product of, I'm a part of, I've seen it happen. I've either managed it or monitored or established it. And so that to me is so much more exciting than working the standard 9 to 5. And after being in the Marine Corps and working at a desk, doing admin work in the beginning, I knew that wasn't something I wanted to go back to.
Yeah. And so speaking to the veterans out there that may either still be in and they're looking to transition, or they're somewhere in their transition, or maybe they've gotten out and gone into the job and they realize, you know what, I should have gone and done something else. What kind of lessons did you learn as far as transition goes, or did you just have it all? You just one of those rare guys that had all figured out and knew exactly what you were going to do, and that's how it turned out?
I mean, I definitely had a vision for what I wanted to do,
Uh-huh.
and I wasn't quite sure how it all was going to come together. I didn't have a studio, but I've been doing research and really just sort of tapping into resources and just sometimes just sitting down with friends and just brainstorming and getting feedback from them, whether I took it or not. Just getting their perspective, getting an outside perspective, because I knew that I was too close to it because it was my passion and this is what I wanted to do. So I needed to get someone else's perspective sometimes to sort of then be able to take a step back and look at it from a different angle and say, okay, let's do this. We'll adjust and move this direction. Um, but it definitely didn't have it. Actually, a lot of it sort of, I picked up on the fly where I would be doing something or working on a project and that project would turn into something else, or I would get a client because of something that I did that I had no idea was even possible. And that's how I learned a lot of the business and learned what clients I could market to. A lot of it, was sometimes on accident and sort of just taking that learning and moving forward.
So a lot of your progress was just due to getting in there, getting your hands dirty, making it happen, and then pivoting and adjusting as you went along.
Exactly. And there were times where, there's always this frustrating moments where it's like, oh God, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to be able to do it. And then the next day I wake up in the morning, I'm like, all right, we're back on track. We're moving forward. But there's always those moments where it's harder, I find, as an entrepreneur, as someone doing business for yourself, to stay focused because you don't have someone on you all the time. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? It's on you to say, did I do this? I need to do this. I need to do that. And to really stay on track and to monitor yourself and have that self-discipline. And that's something I guess I struggled with, was finding that balance and not being too hard on myself, but also making sure I was doing what I needed to do.
Right. I would say that's one of those entrepreneurial traps that a lot of people may not be aware of until you get into it. Especially a veteran coming out of the military, where you lead a pretty regimented life. You've got a set work schedule. You got people working for you. You're working for people that you're accountable to. And all of a sudden you find yourself on your own. And it's like, what am I really supposed to be working on here? It's not like you're lazy and you don't do anything. It's just, you might not be doing what needs to be done at this particular time. Or even if you are, you tend to doubt yourself because you don't have anybody to bounce the ideas off of or to be accountable to.
Exactly.
Now, when you're still in the Marine Corps and you're thinking about getting out and starting your own photography business, did you ever bounce your ideas or dreams off your fellow Marines, or did you kind of keep it to yourself?
No, one thing about being the photographer on the MSG program is that I had so much support. For one thing, everyone had became a victim of my of my passion at some point. What Marines were off duty? Who in the embassy needed family portraits, and who could I practice on? And so everyone was at every post was very much aware that photography is what I wanted to do with photography, and they saw it grow from more and more each day, where I got more into it, and we get new gear from B&H Photo Video, and they're like, what is this guy doing with all this stuff? And I'm building a studio and in the living room sometimes on the weekends. So everyone was very much aware of it, and we talked about it, and I got a lot of good feedback and a lot of support. And that was actually, I think, what helped me move forward and helped me decide that I could get out and be successful at it, just because of the support from some of my detachment commanders and just some of the Marines that I worked with. And they, even after I got out, they've been some of the biggest supporters of me and what I'm doing now, years, 3, 4 years, 5 years later. Anytime I post something, or just messaging me saying, wow, you've come so far. So yeah, I definitely didn't keep it to myself.
Well, that's great that you're able to support the Marine Corps mission while you're still in, and yet gain all that valuable experience and knowledge and really build a portfolio. And then to hear that even years after you've been out, you've still got a lot of support from your Marine Corps bros and everybody you met years before that can see where you've made it to at this point.
Definitely. Yeah. I appreciate it. I'm so thankful for it.
Now, did you go through the standard transition separations classes, or did you do any specialized type stuff on your way out?
Just a normal tap and TAMS that everyone goes through. I actually went through it twice. Once when I initially got out of the Marine Corps, and then I went back into the reserves, and then I went through it again when I left the Pentagon in 2012. or 2013, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I went through all that stuff a couple different times myself, several years apart. And the last time I went through last year, I actually stumbled across an entrepreneur workshop that was in addition to the mandatory stuff. And I went through that, and that really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And it's one of the things I like to point out to veterans is, in addition to just the standard stuff, the mandatory stuff you have to go through, look for those other programs, ask about those other programs. And sometimes you might even have to travel to a different base or station to go to a particular type program. But most of the time, the ability for you to travel is there to go to those programs that you need to go to. Now, there's a lot of other things going on out in the entrepreneurial world with veterans and everything, including a lot of great programs with schools, universities. There's a lot of incubators and startup weekends and that kind of stuff going on. Did you really ever get involved in much of that, or were you just so deep in your photography thing, you just ran with it when you walked out the door and haven't really looked back?
I think there's so much available now, today, 2014, that in 2010, 2011, there wasn't as much, or at least I didn't find it or I didn't see it available to me at that time. It wasn't until, more recently where now this network has just sort of exploded where everywhere I look, there's veterans doing amazing things. And, groups of veterans who are just, they're there to bounce ideas off each other, and everyone's doing this or doing that. And so then, I sort of tried to separate myself and use a lot of the civilian, connections and a lot of the civilian resources, and didn't really tap into those veteran resources at that time. And I wish at that, then there would have been more, or if it would have been available or mentioned or put out there that I could have used and been a part of and joined.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of veterans experience. I know I experienced that myself with getting out as I went through this entrepreneurial process and started discovering these things as I went along. That's really where the idea for this podcast came about was, I want to go back and pretend I'm the guy who hadn't gotten out yet and feature all these great ideas and people on a podcast where somebody can listen to the podcast and it can open those doors and turn those lights on for them and help them get a faster start and actually get them exposed to those programs and resources that are out there. So, with where you're at now, do you run into any issues with you spend so much time running your business that you hardly have time to do much in the way of photography? Have you dealt with that issue yet and had to bring in some help?
I have brought in some help for times, more on a temporary basis to help sort of get things rolling forward and to when things get busy. So I'll bring in some interns here and there and occasionally some assistants to help. But I find that for one, that I have to continue to do just photography for me. Projects for me, whether it's, booking models or just working with friends and just doing stuff for fun, which sort of keeps me balanced, which then allows me to, get back and focus on, I can go out and do a shoot just for fun and not worry about having to produce anything. If we don't get anything, we don't get anything. It's just for fun. And then that allows me to come back with, to the desk and do the admin work and with a fresh mind and sort of clear headed and, back being centered again. But with the, the day-to-day admin stuff, I think the Marine Corps sort of helped me with that, to sort of keeping on top of that and dealing with that. But there is some times where it's like that challenge where, okay, we need more. I need more help. I need someone who can be here all the time. But then I get into that struggle where if I bring someone in, now we're going to have the issue with paying for that person. Now that increases our overhead because now we have this extra employee. So there's this battle that goes, back and forth. Ideally I would love to have someone here all the time helping every day, but that's not realistic. So I sort of have to be reasonable with that as I'm moving forward to something considered more and more.
Yeah. It's kind of the entrepreneurial struggle with expansion. You start bringing in employees and it can change everything. You ever toy with the idea or looked into the concept of virtual assistants and that kind of thing? Or is that really something that's going to apply to your line of work?
I have looked at that, and in my line of work, there's so much is really personal. I get to know my clients before they walk in the door to do their photo shoots, whether it's talking with them over the phone and having consultations, or at the end editing their photos and getting feedback and making any touch-ups that need to be done. So it's such a personal, real interaction environment that outsourcing something like that wouldn't be realistic. It would sort of, I think, damage the brand a little bit.
Uh-huh. Now, in the interest of photography, I mean, everybody's got cameras these days, and actually pretty darn good cameras, and everyone's taking pictures. You got the whole Instagram stuff, and there's actually people taking really, really good stuff with their iPhones or iPads, whatever, and all the digital cameras. How do you survive in the world of photography these days with doing that kind of stuff?
It's funny. That's something that, constantly thinking about, is that everyone's a photographer now. Everyone has cameras. Everyone has the ability to take good shots. But I think what sets me apart is, one, my, personality. I get out there, I meet and chat with people, and I'm always networking. And my marketing background really gives me some edge, gives me some leverage to know what people are going to respond to, and creating, whether it's ads, digital visual ads for Facebook or Instagram, or just creating visual images that are going to be beneficial to my portfolio and allow me to book clients. Because for me, as in photography, there's creating art and having fun, and there's making money. And so sometimes those are two different kinds of photography, and then sometimes they overlap. So shooting headshots for me is bread and butter. I can shoot headshots every day, and that sort of helps. That covers our bills. That keeps the door open. And then a lot of the other work, the more fashion and creative work, is like a filler. It comes in. That's not every day, but it's the work that comes along that keeps things interesting. And those people talk, and that continues to send work in the door. So a lot of word of mouth. And there's going to be, the competition's there. It's going to become more and more, but it's really about now establishing myself and making a name for myself before all these other little names continue to pop up here and there.
Yeah, you talked about the things where you make your money, your bread and butter, and of course there are things that where you're making money, but that's not the true essence of what the love of photography may be about. And I'm sure that this is something that anybody in an artistic, creative environment has to deal with. Is I can do the things that make money, but my true passion, my true love, is the things over here, which may or may not make that much money.
Exactly.
So where are you at now as far as, could you share some numbers with us, like size of your portfolio and, number of clients, and, you doing this full time at this point?
So I do shoot full time. I have, like you mentioned before, I have a dedicated studio here in DC. And I have partnerships with photographers who own studios in New York and LA, which allows me to travel and shoot consistently in the same studio when I'm in those cities. But as far as clients, we shoot anywhere between 6 and 10 photo shoots a week. And sometimes those numbers go lower, but sometimes maybe we'll only have 4 clients in a week. But it could be anyone from, someone who needs headshots, an actor who's building headshots, or a model who's doing, updating their portfolio. Or sometimes, new designers who are doing a complete lookbook or commercial shoot. So the clients always change. There's a certain consistency, but then there's always these other clients that pop in the door that are, exciting and keep things interesting. But I have some major clients and bigger clients that I shoot for. I've worked with the Washington Redskins. I work with a lot of big associations, the Association of American Medical Colleges here in DC. I did stuff for American University when I was there. And it's always shifting, it's always changing, but I'm always working to bring in those bigger clients and to bring in those companies and organizations, because once we can establish a long-term relationship with them, that just keeps, that keeps giving. It keeps us busy. Every 2 to 3 months, I have a lot of companies that will call back and, they hire new employees. We're going to come in and shoot 2 or 3 people at a time. And that happens a lot. That happens every 2-3 weeks around here. And again, that goes back to that headshots being the bread and butter with a lot of the clients we have here in DC.
Now, do you have any of the Marine Corps units anywhere around? Ask you to come do the Marine Corps ball?
No, not really. I don't do a lot of event photography. I do event photography for some of my consistent clients who I shoot their headshots, and so they ask me to shoot their events. But for the most part, I don't do a lot of event photography or wedding photography these days. Normally only for people that, people I like, companies I work with consistently, but a lot of it's more on the portraiture side, headshots, portraits, those marketing photos, lifestyle photos, commercial shots. That's more of the work that I do.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a couple big name clients there. How is it you're working your way into some of those bigger clients and consistent business, really?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes back to the word of mouth. A lot of the clients of my bigger clients have been just from networking and doing photo shoots where there may be someone on set who remembers me, and 2 months later, or a year later, 3 years later, I get a call or a text message sometimes asking if I'm still in the area and available to do a photo shoot or to work on a project. And that's what happened with That's what happened with the Redskins. I did a photo shoot 2 years prior with a gentleman who works there. And he remembered me and gave me a call one day and wanted to know if I was interested in working on a project with him. And I was like, most definitely. And so that was a great opportunity. And I definitely jumped all over it, and it opened doors to other things with the Redskins, with the charitable foundation and other groups that are associated with them. So it's one of those, just making the right impression with the right people at the right time. And being open and available to the work that comes in, because I ended up doing something I wouldn't normally do for the Redskins, which was architectural photography and shooting all the suites. But that opened up doors to do a lot of other creative work and working with people later on.
Yeah, it sounds like you walk through one door and there's 2 or 3 more to go through each time. So it sounds like your definitely network is expanding and getting more and more business all the time.
Yeah.
Now,
oh, sorry.
Well, go ahead. I was going to ask you, looking back on it years ago in the Marine Corps, had you envisioned yourself being where you're at now?
I envisioned myself being where I am now, but I didn't imagine it happening this fast. I think that's one thing that's been a shock to me, is how fast things have happened, and how consistently things have been happening. So it's one of the things where I'm excited about what's coming in the door and the progress that's been made and the big things that are happening in the next year or so. But there's just been a lot of opportunities that are sort of kicked me 6 months ahead of where I thought I was going to be. And that's been the thing that's really exciting, and sort of maintaining that and continuing to push for those opportunities that kick me 2 months, 3 months ahead of where my goals placed me.
That's great. Yeah, it's always a good problem to have, to think that you made it much quicker than you were expecting. So, in regards to the veterans out there that are thinking about doing their entrepreneurial venture, do you have any words of advice that come to mind, just judging from what you learned going through the process yourself?
I really say just use the resources that are available to you, whether that just be expressing your visions and your goals with friends and family, just getting feedback, and take it for what it is. Take the feedback from that perspective, but keep in mind what your goals are, because my family and friends back home in Florida tried to talk me out of getting out of the military to become a photographer. They told me don't do it. My Marine buddy said, get out, do it, go for it, make it happen. My family said, no, you have stability. The Marine Corps is good to you. You get paid this and that. Don't get out. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. Family says stay in. Marines say get out, but the Marines are supporting me. They're seeing everything that's happening, and now I go home 5 years later, and my family is like, oh my God, we show your website to everyone. We talk about this, so now they give me the support because they've seen me do it, but they were very skeptical. So you have to, you can't take it you have to, take it as a grain of salt. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Keep your goals in mind and work towards that. If you have to pivot and move a different direction to be able to accomplish it, do that, but don't give up on it. Because if I had given up way back then, I'd still be in the Marine Corps, which wouldn't be bad, but I wouldn't be doing what I love to do.
Yeah. So your family's all good with it at this point, right?
They are. Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's great. Well, all right, Cedric, we're about out of time. So I'll give the last parting words to you, and really appreciate you being here. And it was great talking to a fellow Marine, and you obviously made the right choice in moving out of the Marine Corps and following your passion and your dreams into the world of photography.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show. Definitely appreciate that.
All right, Cedric, we'll simplify to you and look forward to seeing your future success getting bigger and bigger.
Thank you. I look forward to it as well.
All right. Well, take care. It's good talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you like the show, leave us a review on iTunes. Reviews are always greatly appreciated. So until next time, this veteran is Oscar Mike.